Texas, July, 1944. The 4th of July. Barbecue at Camp Swift filled afternoon air with smoke and scents that made 12 German women prisoners stop in their tracks halfway across the yard. They'd been summoned from their barracks for what guards called a camp celebration, expecting institutional food on metal trays. Instead, they found pits smoking with mesquite wood, tables loaded with beef that hadn't been rationed or stretched or substituted, and Sergeant Bobby Ray Thompson, third-generation rancher from Fredericksburg, grinning as he flipped steaks the size of dinner plates. "Y'all ever had real Texas barbecue?" he asked in fractured German. They hadn't. They were about to discover what abundance tasted like. To understand what happened on that July afternoon, you must first understand what 12 German women had forgotten food could be. Erika Schneider, 27, from Munich, had lost her memory of meat as something substantial. In Germany, by 1944, meat was rumor. Ration cards promised small quantities, but stores had nothing to sell. When meat appeared, it was scraps, bits of gristle, bone with minimal flesh, organs no one would have eaten in peacetime. Protein came from imagination and denial. She'd been eating potatoes and turnips for 2 years. Sometimes bread, black, dense, stretched with sawdust and hope. Sometimes soup that pretended to contain vegetables. Her body had adapted to scarcity the way bodies do, burning fat stores, then muscle, learning to function on minimum calories while performing maximum work. When she'd been captured in France in May 1944, her communications unit overrun as Allied forces pushed inland from Normandy, she'd weighed 48 kilograms on a frame that should have carried 60. Her ribs showed. Her face was hollow. Her body had forgotten what satiation felt like. The other 11 women shared similar stories. Greta Hoffman from Hamburg, who remembered eating chicken once in 1942 and still dreamed about it. Anna Weber from Berlin, whose mother's recipe book had become cruel fiction. Instructions for dishes requiring ingredients that no longer existed. Liesel Koch from Stuttgart, who traded family jewelry for a pound of butter on the black market and felt guilty about the luxury. They'd been transported to America in June, processed through facilities where they'd eaten institutional meals that were adequate by military standards, which meant more food than they'd seen in years. Oatmeal, eggs, bread with butter, milk, coffee. Their bodies had started the slow process of remembering what nourishment meant, but they hadn't yet experienced Texas, hadn't yet encountered a culture where abundance was assumed, where meat was common, where feeding people generously was point of pride rather than impossible luxury. July 4th, 1944, Independence Day, American holiday celebrating revolution and freedom. Strange concepts for prisoners celebrating in captivity. But Camp Swift's commander, Colonel James Harrison, believed that exposing prisoners to American culture was part of the Geneva Convention's spirit, if not its letter. He authorized a camp-wide celebration, baseball games, music, and a barbecue that would feed 2,000 prisoners and guards alike. The preparations started at dawn. Staff Sergeant Bobby Ray Thompson, 42, supervised a crew building pits from concrete blocks and metal grates. They stacked mesquite wood, the Texas standard for smoke flavor, and lit fires that would burn down to coals perfect for slow-cooking beef. The beef came from local ranchers who donated cattle to the camp, partly from patriotism, partly from practical need for help with harvest labor. 2 steers had been processed, yielding hundreds of pounds of meat, more meat than the German women had seen in their entire time as prisoners, more meat than they'd seen in their final year in Germany. Thompson was a rancher before the war, inherited land his grandfather had claimed in the 1870s. He understood cattle, understood meat, understood the Texas conviction that hospitality meant feeding people until they couldn't move. He'd volunteered for this duty specifically. cooking for the 4th of July celebration, showing prisoners what American abundance looked like. "Y'all gonna feed them Germans the same as us?" asked Private Danny Wilson, 19, helping prep the pits. "Same as everyone," Thompson confirmed. "Can't have a proper Texas barbecue and skimp on portions. Wouldn't be right." "They're prisoners, Sarge. Enemy prisoners." "They're also people who've been starving for years," Thompson replied. "Besides, showing them American hospitality is better propaganda than any leaflet. Let them eat well, let them see how we live, let them take that knowledge home. That's how you win peace, not just war." By noon, the pits were ready. Coals glowed orange beneath metal grates. Beef went on, massive cuts that sizzled when they hit hot metal, releasing smoke that carried across the camp on the wind. The German women were in their barracks when the smell reached them. They looked at each other with confusion, trying to identify what they were smelling. Meat, clearly, but not the thin, gray boiled meat of rationing. This was something else. This was smoke and fat and richness that made saliva pool in mouths that had forgotten how to respond to proper food. "What is that?" Anna asked, standing near the window. "I don't know," Erica replied. "But it smells like before the war. Like when my grandmother would cook Sunday roast." Sergeant Hayes appeared at their barracks at 1 o'clock, knocking on the open door. "Ladies, you're invited to the 4th of July celebration. Yard near the mess hall. Food will be served at 2. You're expected to attend." "Expected?" Greta asked in careful English. "This is order?" "It's an invitation," Hayes clarified. "But yeah, the colonel wants everyone there, part of cultural education, showing y'all American traditions." They dressed in their cleanest prisoner uniforms, marked PW on the back, but maintained as well as possible given limited resources. Walked across the compound toward the source of that incredible smell. Joined hundreds of male German prisoners, Italian prisoners, and American personnel gathering in a yard transformed by long tables, folding chairs, and those smoking pits that promised something they'd all forgotten was possible. The tables were loaded with food, not just meat, though that dominated, but sides that suggested abundance bordering on obscene. Potato salad, coleslaw, baked beans with molasses, corn on the cob, fresh bread, watermelon, peach cobbler, sweet tea in pitchers sweating condensation in the July heat. The German women stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. This was more food than their entire barracks would have received in a month in Germany. This was abundance that made no sense given the scarcity they'd internalized as reality. "Is this real?" Liesel whispered. "Or are we being deceived somehow?" "It's real," Erica replied. "Look at American soldiers. They're eating same food. This is their normal. This is what America means." Sergeant Thompson stood near the pits, wearing an apron that said, "Kiss the cook," in English. He waved the women over with a spatula. "Y'all come get plates. Food's ready. We got brisket, we got ribs, we got steaks, all Texas beef, cooked proper. Get yourselves some sides, eat till you're full." His German was terrible, but his gestures were clear. The women took metal trays, moved through serving lines where American soldiers loaded plates with quantities that seemed impossible. A steak, not a thin slice, but a thick cut, maybe 12 ounces. Ribs, 3 bones glistening with sauce. Brisket, chunks of meat so tender it fell apart when touched. Plus, all the sides. Potatoes dressed with mayonnaise and mustard. Slaw tangy with vinegar. Beans sweet and smoky. Corn dripping with butter. Bread still warm from ovens. Erica's tray was so heavy she almost dropped it. She found a spot at a table, sat down, stared at food that felt like hallucination. Beside her, Greta was crying silently. Anna looked shell-shocked. Liesel's hands trembled as she picked up a fork. "How do we eat this?" Anna asked. "Where do we even start?" "Start anywhere," said a voice in German. They looked up. Sergeant Thompson had approached, carrying his own plate loaded with food. "Try the brisket first. That's been smoking for 12 hours. Mesquite wood. Rub with salt, pepper, paprika. Low and slow until the meat just falls apart. That's Texas tradition." Erica cut a small piece of brisket, brought it to her mouth. The smell alone was overwhelming. Smoke and beef and spices that made her head spin. She placed it on her tongue. The texture was impossible. She'd been eating dry bread and watery soup for so long that her mouth didn't know how to process actual meat. The beef was tender beyond belief, falling apart without chewing. The smoke flavor was deep, complex, nothing like the boiled meat of rationing. The fat, actual fat, something Germany had forgotten existed, melted across her tongue. She chewed slowly, trying to make the bite last, trying to understand what she was tasting. It was beef, yes, but it was also salt and pepper and smoke and something indefinable that came from care and time, and a culture that believed good food mattered. She swallowed, sat perfectly still for a moment, then started crying. Not quiet tears, real sobbing. Her body couldn't contain the response. Shock and grief and relief and something like rage that this food existed while her family in Munich was eating sawdust bread. The contradictions were too large to process rationally. Thompson noticed. Walked over, concerned. "You okay? Food bad?" "No," Erica managed in broken English. "Food is too good. I forgot food could be this. I forgot meat was real thing, not memory. This is—" She couldn't find words in German or English. "This is what we lost, what Germany lost. This is abundance we never had." Thompson sat down across from her. "Look, I know this is overwhelming. I know y'all been living on rations for years, but this—" He gestured at the spread. "This is just normal Texas hospitality. This is how we eat when we're celebrating. Nothing special, really, just food." "In Germany, this would feed 50 people," Erica said. "This one meal, and here you have hundreds of people eating this much. How? How is this possible?" "America produces more food than we can eat," Thompson explained. "We got land. We got rain. We got systems that work. We don't have bombs falling on farms or soldiers burning fields. War is somewhere else. Here, we just keep producing, keep eating, keep living normal lives." The explanation was simple but devastating. America had fought a global war while maintaining abundance at home. Germany had mobilized everything, sacrificed everything, and still lost. The disparity wasn't just military, it was fundamental. It was the difference between systems that produced food and systems that produced propaganda, claiming scarcity made you strong. The other women were having similar experiences. Anna bit into a rib, meat so tender it slid off the bone, sauce sweet and tangy, fat coating her lips. She'd forgotten that food could be pleasurable, not just fuel. She'd forgotten that eating could be joy. Greta tried the steak. Cooked medium rare, pink in the center, seasoned with nothing but salt and pepper. The beef tasted like beef, not like substitutes or stretchers or imagination. Just pure protein, rich and satisfying. She ate slowly, methodically, her brain struggling to process abundance. Liesel loaded her fork with potato salad, creamy, tangy, studded with eggs and pickles. The mayonnaise alone was luxury Germany couldn't produce. Eggs were rare, oil was rarer. Making a dish this rich with ingredients this scarce was impossible. Yet here it was, in quantities suggesting Americans made it regularly without considering the cost. Around them, other prisoners were having the same reactions. Male German soldiers eating steaks with expressions of disbelief. Italian prisoners attacking ribs with enthusiasm that bordered on desperation. Everyone processing the cognitive dissonance of eating this well while being defeated prisoners. American soldiers ate the same food without the ceremony. For them, this was just a good barbecue. Better than usual mess hall food, sure, but not fundamentally different from backyard cookouts at home. They ate and talked and laughed, treating abundance as normal. The German women watched them, tried to understand how any society could sustain this level of plenty, tried to reconcile propaganda about American degeneracy and weakness with the reality of soldiers who'd never known hunger, who ate like this was unremarkable, who fought wars while their families barbecued at home. After eating, after attempting to eat because finishing was impossible, the portions were too large, Erica approached Sergeant Thompson with a question that had been building. "How do you make this? The brisket? I want to know." Thompson smiled. "Well, first you need a good cut. Brisket is tough meat, needs low heat for long time. You rub it with seasonings, salt, pepper, maybe some paprika or garlic powder. Then you smoke it at around 225 degrees for 12-14 hours. Keep the wood burning steady, maintain moisture, let time do the work." Erica listened, but she was really asking something else. "No, I mean, where do you get this much meat?" "In Germany, we have ration cards. Sometimes cards have numbers, but stores have no meat. How do you have so much?" Thompson thought about how to explain. "America's got a lot of cattle, Texas especially. We raise beef here, always have. Even during war, we keep producing. Government buys some for military, but we got plenty for civilians too. It's just what we do." "But don't you have rationing? Don't you sacrifice for war effort?" "Some rationing, sure. Sugar's limited. Butter's expensive. But meat? We got plenty. Coffee's harder to get than beef here. That's just how our economy works." Erica absorbed this. "So, while Germany starves, while we eat turnips and call it meal, America has more meat than needed. This is why you won. Not because of better soldiers or superior tactics. Because you had food and we didn't. Because you could fight without sacrifice and we sacrificed everything." "That's part of it," Thompson agreed. "But it's more than just food. It's systems that work. Democracy that produces abundance, freedom that motivates people to keep producing, all of it together. Food's just the most obvious part. When I go home, if I go home, how do I explain this to my family? How do I tell them that while we were starving for the war effort, Americans were eating steaks and barbecuing for holidays? They won't believe me. They'll think I'm exaggerating." "Tell them anyway," Thompson said. "Tell them the truth. That's how you rebuild, with truth about what worked and what didn't. You can't fix Germany by clinging to lies that led to this mess." The celebration continued through afternoon. Music played. American popular songs that sounded alien and cheerful. Baseball games started on makeshift diamonds. Men threw baseballs while wearing prisoner uniforms marked PW, guarded but not restricted, allowed to play because someone had decided that treating prisoners like humans produced better results than treating them like threats. The German women sat in shade near the barracks, too full to move, processing what they'd experienced. Their stomachs hurt, not from bad food but from good food consumed after years of scarcity. Their bodies didn't know how to process this much protein, this much fat, this much richness. "I feel sick," Anna admitted. "Not from poison, just from abundance, too much too fast." "I feel guilty," Greta said. "My family in Hamburg is eating whatever they can find, maybe nothing. And I just ate more meat than they've seen in years. How is that fair?" "It's not fair," Erica replied. "Nothing about this war is fair. But we can't help them by refusing to eat. We can only help by surviving, by learning, by taking these lessons home when we can." "What lessons?" Liesel asked. "That Americans have more food? We knew that already." "No," Erica said. "Not just that they have more. That they have more because their system works better. Because they didn't sacrifice everything for war. Because they kept civilian life functioning while fighting overseas. That's the lesson. Not just that they're rich, but that they're rich because they made different choices than Germany made." The conversation was dangerous. Criticizing the German system could be construed as disloyalty, even for prisoners. But they were too far from Germany now, too deep into reality that contradicted propaganda. The lies were cracking under the weight of brisket and ribs. As sunset turned the sky orange and purple, the celebration wound down. Leftover food was packed up, though there wasn't much, even with massive quantities prepared. 2,000 people eating enthusiastically had consumed most of what was available. Sergeant Thompson found the German women before they returned to barracks. He carried a bundle wrapped in butcher paper. "Leftovers," he explained in German. "For y'all, keep in your barracks kitchen. Make sandwiches tomorrow. Don't let good meat go to waste." Erica took the package. It was heavy, still warm. "Why give this to us? We are prisoners." "Because I cooked too much, and you ladies appreciate good food. Also," he paused, seeming to debate something. "My grandfather came from Germany, a town called Fredericksburg, but before that actual Germany. Came over in 1850s. He taught me that German people aren't bad people. They're just people. This war's between governments, not between me and you." "Your grandfather was German?" Anna asked, surprised. "German Texan," Thompson corrected. "Came here, learned English, raised cattle, became American, but he never forgot where he came from. Used to cook German food sometimes. Different from Texas food, but good in its own way. He'd want me to treat y'all right." The women were quiet. The idea that Americans had German heritage, that enemy and ally could be connected by family history, complicated the neat categories propaganda had taught. "Thank you," Erica said finally, "for food, for kindness, for treating us like your grandfather would have wanted." "You're welcome," Thompson replied. "Now, get some rest. Y'all probably gonna feel real full and real tired tonight. That's normal after eating this much. Your bodies need time to adjust to having actual food again." In the barracks, the women unwrapped the leftover package. Inside was maybe 3 pounds of brisket, some ribs, a few pieces of steak. Enough for sandwiches for days. In Germany, this would have been a week's ration for an entire family. They stored it in the small kitchen area, then sat on their bunks, too full to sleep but too exhausted to stay awake. Their bodies were processing more calories than they'd had in months. Their minds were processing revelations about propaganda and reality. "I'm going to dream about that brisket," Greta said. "I know I am, and then I'm going to wake up and feel guilty for dreaming about food while people starve." "Don't feel guilty," Helene Richter said. She was one of the longer-term prisoners, had been at Camp Swift for 6 months, had adjusted better to American abundance. "Feel grateful, learn from it, but don't feel guilty for eating food that was offered freely." "How do you not feel guilty?" Anna asked. "How do you eat this well and not think about family at home?" "By understanding that refusing to eat doesn't help them," Helene replied. "By recognizing that we're learning lessons here that will matter when we go home. By accepting that sometimes life is unfair and we're on the lucky side for once. Guilt is natural, but it's not productive." Erica lay on her bunk, hands on her too full stomach, thinking about abundance and scarcity, about propaganda that claimed American weakness and reality that proved American strength, about a Texas sergeant whose German grandfather would have wanted prisoners treated well, about barbecue as a political statement. She thought about going home eventually, about telling her family that while they were eating turnips, she'd eaten steak, about the reactions, disbelief, maybe anger, definitely confusion about how the world could be so unequal. She thought about Sergeant Thompson's words, "Tell them the truth, that's how you rebuild." Maybe that was her duty now, not to feel guilty about eating, but to remember everything she learned and teach it to others, to be honest about German failures and American successes, to help Germany rebuild on truth instead of the lies that led to this war. The thought was both terrifying and clarifying. She had a purpose. She had witnessed something important, and when she finally went home, she would carry these memories like documentation, like evidence, like testimony about what worked and what didn't. The 4th of July barbecue became legend in the camp. Prisoners talked about it for months. The Germans who'd been there told newcomers about the abundance, about the smoke, about Sergeant Thompson cooking enough beef to feed 2,000 people without apparent strain. Some new arrivals didn't believe the stories, thought they were exaggerations or propaganda. Then they'd experience camp meals, not barbecue-level abundance, but adequate protein, regular portions, food that suggested America had resources to spare, even for feeding prisoners. Erica wrote to her family in August. The letter was censored, limited in what it could say, but she tried to communicate the essential truth. "Dear Mother and Father, I am being treated well. The food is adequate, more than adequate. I have gained weight. I am healthy. I want you to know that when I come home, I will bring knowledge about why Germany lost. It was not because we lacked courage or discipline. It was because our enemies had resources we could not match. They eat well while fighting. Their civilians live normal lives during war. They produce more than they consume. This is what defeated us. I will explain more when I return. Your daughter, Erica." The letter reached Munich 3 months later. Her mother wrote back in December, "Dearest Erica, we are grateful you are safe and eating well. Here conditions are difficult. We have little food. The city is damaged. We wait for war to end and for you to come home. When you do, tell us everything. We want to understand what happened. We want to know truth. Come home safe. With love, Mother. Spring 1945 brought Germany's surrender. Summer brought repatriation orders. The women would return home in stages, processed through facilities, transported across ocean, released into occupied zones. Before leaving, Erica asked Sergeant Thompson for something unusual. "Can you write down recipe for brisket? I want to take home, want to remember." Thompson smiled. Got paper and pencil, wrote in English, "Texas brisket. Good beef brisket, 10-15 pounds, salt, pepper, garlic powder, paprika, mesquite wood, for smoke, rub meat with seasonings. Let sit overnight if you got time. Smoke at 225 degrees for 12-14 hours. Keep wood burning steady, don't rush it. Low and slow makes the meat tender. Serve with whatever sides you got. Feed people till they're full. That's Texas hospitality." At the bottom, he added in halting German, "For Erica, so she remembers that enemies can share food and become friends. Bobby Ray Thompson, Texas." Erica folded the paper carefully. Put it in her small bag of possessions. Letters, photographs, this recipe, things to carry home, evidence of what she'd learned. "I probably never cook this," she said. "Germany will not have beef like this for many years, maybe never again." "Maybe not," Thompson agreed. "But you'll have the recipe. And someday, when things are better, maybe you'll try it. And you'll remember this place. And you'll tell your children about Texas barbecue and how it taught you something about abundance and systems and why some countries succeed while others fail." "I will tell them," Erica promised. "I will teach them that America won not just with weapons, but with food, that you defeated us by eating well while we starved, that propaganda about your weakness was lies covering our own failure. "Tell them something else too," Thompson said. "Tell them that the rancher who cooked your barbecue had a German grandfather, that enemies can be family, that hatred is taught, not natural, that we're all just people trying to survive, and sometimes we end up on different sides of wars we didn't start." Erica nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. September 1945. Erica returned to Munich. The city was worse than she'd imagined. Block after block of ruins, people living in cellars, food so scarce that what she'd complained about in 1944 looked like abundance compared to post-war scarcity. Her family had survived. Thin, traumatized, but alive. They lived in a damaged apartment building, sharing space with 3 other families. They had almost no food. What they had came from rations provided by occupation forces, ironically, provided by the same American military that had fed her steaks in Texas. "Tell us about America," her father said that first evening. "Tell us about captivity. Tell us truth." Erica told them about Camp Swift, about Sergeant Thompson and his German grandfather, about the 4th of July barbecue where she'd eaten more meat than she'd seen in 3 years, about abundance that made German scarcity look like unnecessary suffering rather than noble sacrifice. "They fed you steak?" her mother asked, disbelieving. "While we were eating turnips? While children were starving?" "Yes," Erica said. "They fed prisoners steak, not to be cruel, not to mock us, but because that's their normal, that's what America means. Abundance so common that even prisoners eat well." "How?" her father asked. "How do they have so much?" "Because their system works," Erica replied. "Because democracy produces prosperity. Because freedom motivates production. Because they didn't sacrifice everything for war. They kept civilian life functioning while fighting overseas. That's what defeated us. Not superior soldiers, superior systems." The conversation was difficult, painful. Her family had sacrificed everything for a cause that had failed. Hearing that their enemies had never suffered comparable privation was devastating. But it was also necessary. Germany needed truth, not more lies. Erica showed them the recipe Thompson had written. They read it, seeing Texas, brisket as evidence of American abundance, seeing the note about enemies becoming friends as a challenge to everything they'd been taught. "Will you cook this?" her mother asked. "Someday? If Germany rebuilds enough to have beef again." Erica replied, "If we learn lessons from this defeat, if we build systems that produce abundance instead of propaganda, then yes. I'll cook Texas brisket. I'll invite family and friends, and I'll tell them about the 4th of July, 1944, when I learned that enemies can share food and that sharing food can defeat hatred more effectively than any weapon." Erica Hoffman married in 1948, started a restaurant in Munich in 1952, small place, nothing fancy, serving traditional German food to help people remember what normal life tasted like. The restaurant survived, grew, became successful. In 1965, 20 years after the war, she added something new to the menu: Texas-style brisket. She'd learned to source decent beef by then, had adapted Thompson's recipe to German equipment and ingredients, made it as close to that 4th of July memory as possible. The dish was popular. Germans who'd never experienced Texas barbecue enjoyed the smoke and spice. Americans stationed in Germany sought it out, surprised to find authentic brisket in Munich. The restaurant became known for bridging cultures through food. In 1974, a customer asked about the brisket's origin. Erica was 61 now, gray-haired, still running the restaurant with her daughter. She told the story about being a prisoner, about Sergeant Thompson, about the barbecue that taught her what abundance meant. "Why serve Texas food?" the customer asked. "After they defeated Germany?" "Because they taught me something important," Erica replied. "They taught me that food is connection, that sharing meals breaks down barriers, that enemies who eat together can become friends. I serve Texas brisket to honor that lesson, to remember that even in war, humanity can survive if we choose to preserve it. She still had Thompson's recipe, framed now, hanging in the restaurant kitchen. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting faded, but the message remained clear. For Erica, so she remembers that enemies can share food and become friends. In 1984, 40 years after that 4th of July barbecue, Erica returned to Texas. She was 67, traveling with her daughter and 2 grandchildren. They visited Camp Swift, mostly decommissioned now, converted to other purposes but still recognizable. Through veteran networks and German-American friendship organizations, she found Sergeant Bobby Ray Thompson. He was 82, still living in Fredericksburg, still ranching on smaller scale, still cooking barbecue for family and friends. They met at his ranch. He was older, slower, but his smile was the same. "You came back," he said in German that had somehow gotten better over the years. "I promised myself I would," Erica replied, "to thank you properly, to tell you what that barbecue meant." "It was just food," Thompson said, "nothing special." "It was everything," Erica corrected. "It was the first moment I understood that propaganda had lied, that America wasn't weak, that our enemies were more human than we'd been taught. That food could be abundance instead of scarcity. That barbecue could teach more than any propaganda film." She told him about her restaurant, about serving Texas brisket in Munich, about teaching Germans and Americans alike that sharing food builds bridges propaganda tries to burn. Thompson was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm cooking brisket today for my family. You should stay, eat with us. 40 years later, let's share another meal." They did. His grandchildren met her grandchildren. The Germans and Texans ate together, talking about food and history and the strange paths that connect enemies to friends across decades. The brisket tasted exactly like Erica remembered: smoke and spice and abundance. "You kept the recipe," Thompson observed, looking at the framed paper she'd brought to show him. "I kept everything you taught me," Erica replied. "About food, about systems, about humanity. I built my life on those lessons. Pass them to my children. They'll pass them to theirs. Your barbecue echoes through generations." Erica Hoffman died in 2001 at age 84. Her restaurant in Munich continued, run by her daughter and grandchildren. Texas-style brisket remained on the menu, still made according to Thompson's recipe, still served with the story of its origin. Bobby Ray Thompson died in 1990 at age 88. His funeral was attended by family, friends, and one German woman who flew from Munich to pay respects to the man who'd taught her that enemies could share food and become friends. Among Erica's possessions, her family found journals documenting her time at Camp Swift. One entry, dated July 5, 1944, read, "Yesterday, I ate steak and barbecue for the first time. The food was extraordinary, more meat than I'd seen in years, cooked with care by a Texas sergeant whose grandfather came from Germany. But the food itself was less important than what it represented. It represented a nation so abundant it could feed even its enemies generously. It represented a system that worked well enough to maintain prosperity during global war. It represented the lies of propaganda that claimed Americans were weak and decadent. One meal, one spectacular, overwhelming, devastating meal, destroyed years of indoctrination. I stood near smoking pits and watched abundance being distributed without hesitation, and I understood for the first time why Germany had lost. Not because we lacked courage or discipline, but because we lacked food. Not because they were superior people, but because they had superior systems. The brisket was delicious, but the lesson was bitter and necessary and true.